The sky that day was heavy and gray, as if mourning with the world. Clouds pressed down on the earth, thick and suffocating, and the wind carried the cold bite of winter. My old coat did little to shield me, but I pulled it tighter anyway, trying to make myself smaller, invisible. I had no reason to be there. I didn't know the deceased. I didn't know his family. I didn't even know his name until I arrived at the gates of the cemetery. I was just walking home from my part-time job at a dingy convenience store, cutting through an unfamiliar street, when something strange pulled me in. The narrow dirt path leading into the cemetery was lined with barren trees. Their branches clawed at the sky, like black fingers, as the wind whistled through them. For a moment, I hesitated at the gate, wondering if I should keep walking, but an odd sensation crept up my spine. Something, almost like a whisper in the wind, urged me to step inside. The funeral was already in progress. A sleek black coffin rested on a marble pedestal, surrounded by pure white wreaths. People dressed head to toe in black stood in stiff formation, their heads bowed, their faces were emotionless, almost too composed for a scene of grief. I lingered at the far edge, a stranger among shadows, my breath fogging in the icy air. I might have slipped away quietly, if not for the gust of wind that swept across the clearing. A flap of cloth lifted from a nearby table, and a stack of papers scattered to the ground. One sheet fluttered directly to my feet. I bent down and picked it up. My eyes caught the bold print at the top. Last Will and Testament of Mr. Pham Hoang Min. I froze. My fingers trembled as I held the paper, the edges damp from the dew and my own sweat. A tall man in a dark gray coat approached, his shoes crunching on the gravel. His presence was sharp, like a knife you don't see until it's against your throat. His eyes were cold and assessing. "Who are you?" His voice was low, raspy, but filled with authority. I was just passing by," I stammered, my heart hammering in my chest. He studied me for a moment that felt like an eternity. Then, unexpectedly, he smirked. A slow, knowing smirk that sent another chill down my spine. "Passing by. How interesting," he said, his voice dropping into something that felt like mockery. "Perhaps he wanted you here." I blinked. "Who?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned and signaled to two others, men in black suits with expressions carved from stone. They retrieved the papers, flipping through them swiftly, before stopping on a single page. The tall man's voice rang out, deliberate and clear. "I hereby leave all of my assets and company shares to the first stranger who steps into my funeral." The air turned electric. Murmurs erupted among the attendees. "What? That's insane. He's lost his mind." My breath caught in my throat. First stranger to step into his funeral, that was me. The tall man's smirk widened as he approached, holding out an envelope and a gold-embossed business card. "Congratulations," he said, his voice a silk-wrapped dagger. "You are now the heir to a fortune exceeding $1 billion. The world tilted. My knees felt weak. I stared at the papers in disbelief. My chest pounded with a mix of shock, confusion, and a flicker of something dangerous. But before that flicker could even form into the thought of joy, the air shifted. I felt it, hatred. Cold, venomous hatred. Dozens of eyes burned holes into my back. Not one of those faces celebrated my sudden luck. Their gazes dripped with envy, loathing, and something that made the hairs on my neck rise, intent. I swallowed hard. My fingers clutched the envelope, already slick with sweat. That's when the whispering began. Not actual words, just the low hum of anger, rising like the sound of bees ready to swarm. I didn't know it yet, but the moment I stepped into that funeral, I stepped into a game where the prize was a fortune, and the cost could be my life. The wind howled through the cemetery as I stood frozen, the envelope heavy in my hands. My mind screamed at me to leave, to run, but my legs refused to move. All around me, the mourners' faces turned into masks of silent hostility. It was as if I had trespassed into a ritual I could never understand. And now I had taken something that was never meant for me. The tall man in the gray coat leaned closer, his cold breath brushing my ear. From this moment on, he said slowly, your life will never be the same. Accept this inheritance, and everything that comes with it. My voice shook. What comes with it? He didn't answer. He simply turned, snapping his fingers. The two men in black approached me. One handed me a key attached to a small metal tag with an engraved number, number 17. The other pressed a phone into my palm, a sleek, black smartphone I had never seen before. Its screen blank but warm, as if it had just been used. You'll receive instructions soon, the tall man said. Do not ignore them, and don't trust anyone. With that, he walked away, his coat fluttering in the wind like a shadow slipping into the night. I stumbled back toward the cemetery gates, heart hammering in my chest. Every instinct screamed danger. I felt the weight of dozens of eyes on my back, drilling holes into me, some full of hate, others of hunger. I didn't know which was worse. By the time I reached the street, my hands were shaking uncontrollably. I shoved the envelope, key, and phone into my coat pocket and kept walking, my breath visible in the frigid air. The city felt different now. Every shadow seemed to move. Every passerby seemed to glance at me a second too long. I made it back to my tiny apartment, a cramped one-room space with peeling paint and a single flickering bulb. I locked the door, bolted it, and sat on the floor, my back against the wall. I tore open the envelope. Inside was the official document of inheritance, stamped with red seals and signatures. It listed properties, company shares, luxury cars, offshore accounts, numbers I could barely comprehend. $1 billion. It didn't feel real. My phone buzzed. I nearly jumped out of my skin. The screen lit up with a single message. Welcome to your new life. Go to locker number 17 at the central station. Tonight, midnight. I swallowed hard. My gut twisted. Every part of me wanted to throw the phone away. Pretend none of this was happening. But some invisible force, the same one that had led me to that funeral, pushed me forward. The station was nearly deserted at midnight. The air thick with the smell of oil and old metal. My footsteps echoed on the tiled floor as I approached the row of storage lockers. My fingers trembled as I slid the key into the lock. Click. The door creaked open. Inside was a single black briefcase. I lifted it out, my pulse racing, and slowly opened it. Stacks of crisp $100 bills, a black notebook, and a flash drive. I reached for the notebook first. On the first page, in jagged handwriting, were 5 words that made my blood run cold. Trust no one, they will kill you. My breath hitched. I flipped to the next page. A list of names. Some were marked with XS in red ink. The last name on the list was mine. Suddenly, footsteps echoed behind me. I spun around, heart pounding. A figure in a hooded coat stood at the end of the corridor. Motionless. I couldn't see his face, but I felt his eyes on me. Then, without a word, he began to walk toward me. Slow, deliberate, predatory. I grabbed the briefcase and ran. My shoes slapped against the cold floor as I bolted through the station. The echo of his footsteps chasing me. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, but I didn't dare look back. I burst out into the freezing night air, lungs heaving, and ducked into an alley. My heart wouldn't slow down. My entire body shook with fear and adrenaline. That was the moment I realized, inheriting $1 billion wasn't luck. It was a curse. My hands were numb as I crouched in the shadows of the alley, the cold seeping through my coat and into my bones. I clutched the briefcase like a lifeline, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure whoever had been following me could hear it echoing down the street. The city was quiet, too quiet. Even the hum of distant traffic seemed to fade, leaving only the sound of my own ragged breathing. My phone buzzed in my pocket, startling me. I fumbled it out with shaking hands. Unknown number. Run, they're already behind you. My blood turned to ice. I whipped my head around. The alley looked empty, but the darkness felt alive. Every shadow stretched long and threatening. Suddenly, a metallic clang rang out behind me, the sound of a trash can tipping over. My body moved on instinct. I sprinted, gripping the briefcase, feet splashing through puddles, heart in my throat. The streetlights flickered overhead as I darted through narrow streets and back alleys. Every corner feeling like it could be my last. My legs burned, but adrenaline kept me moving. I didn't know where to go. Home was the first place they would check. And the thought of leading danger to my own door made my stomach twist. I turned a corner and nearly collided with a stray dog rummaging through garbage. The animal yelped and ran. And for a split second, I wished I could disappear as easily as it did. The phone buzzed again. Hotel Orion, room 903. Now, I didn't stop to think. My body was on autopilot. My brain too consumed by the primal urge to survive. I hailed a taxi with a trembling hand, praying no one could hear the panic in my voice as I gave the driver the address. The hotel loomed like a shadowed giant in the night, its windows reflecting the dim glow of the city. It was far too luxurious for someone like me, a rundown part-timer who barely scraped by. Walking through its glass doors with wet shoes and a wild look in my eyes felt surreal. Like I had stepped into someone else's life. The receptionist didn't ask questions. She simply slid a keycard across the counter and murmured, "9th floor." I didn't remember pressing the elevator button, but I remember the ride up, the hum of machinery, the soft music that felt grotesquely out of place against the terror in my chest. Every second in that metal box felt like a countdown. Room 903 was at the end of a long, carpeted hallway. My footsteps sank into the soft floor. Muffled and eerie, I hesitated before the door, my pulse loud in my ears. The keycard beeped. The lock clicked. Inside, the room was dimly lit by a single lamp on the nightstand. Heavy curtains blocked the city lights. It smelled faintly of leather and something metallic. A man sat in the armchair by the window. Older, silver-haired, with a posture that radiated authority even in stillness. His eyes found me immediately, sharp as blades. "You made it," he said, voice low and deliberate. "Good, that means you're still alive." I swallowed hard. Who are you?" He gestured to the briefcase. "Sit, and listen carefully, if you want to live long enough to spend a single dollar of that inheritance. You need to understand what game you've been dragged into." I sat, the chair cold against my damp clothes. My fingers tightened on the briefcase. The man leaned forward, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "The fortune you inherited isn't just money. It's a throne, and a throne always has enemies. The man who died, Pham Hoang Min, didn't just leave you wealth. He left you his war." My stomach knotted. "War?" He nodded slowly. "A war for control, for survival. His death wasn't natural, and now, they will come for you. Because to them, you are an intruder, a loose end, or worse, a target to eliminate before you even understand the rules." As if on cue, the phone in my pocket buzzed again. This time, the message was only 2 words. "They found you." The man's expression didn't change, but his hand slid under his jacket, revealing the glint of a gun. He moved to the light switch and killed the lamp. Darkness swallowed the room, and in that suffocating black, the real game began. The room plunged into darkness, and my heart skipped a beat. I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, the distant honk of a car horn, but inside, it was so quiet I could hear my own pulse in my ears. The silver-haired man's voice was barely a whisper. "Stay low. Don't move until I say so." I crouched instinctively behind the armchair, clutching the briefcase to my chest like a shield. My fingers were slick with sweat. Every shadow in the room felt alive. Then, a soft click. The door handle turned slowly, soundless to anyone else, but deafening to me in that tense silence. A thin strip of light crept across the carpet as the door eased open. 3 figures slipped into the room, dressed in black, faces obscured. They moved like predators, silent, deliberate, certain of their kill. I froze. My lungs refused to work. Suddenly, a deafening crack split the air. A muzzle flash lit the room for a fraction of a second. And I saw the silver-haired man in motion, rolling behind the bed, gun in hand. Another shot followed, then another. "Move!" he barked. I didn't think. I just crawled toward the bathroom as glass shattered and the room exploded with noise. The smell of gunpowder burned my nose. I could hear bullets chewing into the furniture behind me, and my briefcase banged against the floor with every panicked movement. I dove into the bathroom, slamming the door and twisting the lock. My chest heaved as I pressed my back against the cold tile. Outside, chaos reigned. Muffled shouts, heavy footsteps, the violent crash of the TV stand hitting the floor. Then, silence. It was worse than the noise. My mind spun. Were they gone? Did he? A single knock rattled the bathroom door. "Kid," the man's voice came, low and calm, as if the gunfight had been nothing more than a minor inconvenience. "It's clear, for now." My hands trembled as I opened the door. The room was a war zone, lamps shattered. The window cracked, the carpet littered with bullet casings. The silver-haired man stood by the bed, reloading his gun. He glanced at me with sharp eyes. "They'll keep coming. This was just a warning." I stammered. "Why me? I don't even know him. I just walked in." He cut me off. "And that's why he chose you. You were the first stranger to walk in. He didn't trust family, didn't trust friends. They all wanted him dead. He wanted someone, untouched. Someone desperate enough to survive this." His words chilled me. Desperate enough to survive. He wasn't wrong. My life before this had been a string of empty paychecks and lonely nights. But this was survival on a level one couldn't comprehend. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Listen carefully. Pham Hoang Minh wasn't just a billionaire. He controlled things, companies, politicians, people in places you can't even imagine. And he had enemies. When he died, he didn't leave behind a family fortune. He left behind a throne, and a target painted on your back." I swallowed hard. My whole body trembled. The man grabbed the briefcase and pulled out the black notebook. He flipped to a page I hadn't seen before, filled with names, numbers, and arrows connecting them like a spider's web. "This," he said, tapping the page, "is the real inheritance. The money is bait. This notebook is what they want, and what they will kill you for." Before I could respond, the phone buzzed again. I hesitated before looking at the screen. A new message, from the same unknown number. "You have 24 hours to leave the city, or you won't see sunrise." I felt the world tilt again. The room seemed smaller, my chest constricted. The man met my eyes. "You can run, or you can fight, but understand this: if you run, they will find you. If you stay, you become him. And there's no going back." Somewhere deep inside me, something shifted. Fear was still there, gnawing at my bones, but beneath it, a spark of something I hadn't felt in years. A dangerous curiosity, a pull I couldn't resist. I didn't know it then, but that was the moment I stopped being just a passerby. That was the moment I inherited not just a fortune, but a war. The night outside the hotel was a predator waiting to pounce. The silver-haired man, who still hadn't given me his name, led me down the emergency stairs instead of the elevator. Each metal step groaned under our weight, echoing in the concrete stairwell. My lungs burned from the adrenaline and fear, but I didn't dare make a sound. When we reached the alley behind the hotel, the city's cold breath hit my face. Neon lights reflected off puddles, and the hum of distant traffic felt almost comforting, until a pair of headlights flared at the far end of the alley. "Down!" he hissed, shoving me behind a dumpster just as the crack of a suppressed gunshot sliced through the night. The metal bin clanged where the bullet struck, sending vibrations through my bones. "Run on my signal," he muttered, peeking around the corner with his pistol raised. "And whatever you do, don't drop that briefcase." I nodded, clutching it tighter. My heart felt like it would rip through my ribs. Now, we sprinted into the night, my shoes splashing through dirty water as shouts erupted behind us. A black SUV screeched around the corner, tires screaming, and more shots followed. Sparks flew as bullets kissed the walls just inches from my head. We ducked into another alley, twisting through the labyrinth of the city. My chest heaved, every nerve screaming, but the man never slowed. He moved with the confidence of someone who had been hunted before, and survived. Finally, We dove into a dark garage beneath an abandoned building. He slammed the metal door shut and bolted it, leaving us in near total darkness. I leaned against the wall, gasping for air. Who are these people? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulled out the black notebook and flipped it open to a page with a faded photo paperclip to it, a photo of a younger Pham Hoang Min standing with 3 men in suits. These, he said, tapping each face, are the men who will kill for your inheritance. Former allies, now vultures. I studied the picture, my chest tightening. One of the men in the photo looked disturbingly familiar. I couldn't place him, until the memory slammed into me. He had been at the funeral, standing in the back row. His eyes had burned into me as the wall was red. I shivered. He was there. He saw me. Then he knows you're the heir. The silver-haired man said grimly. They won't stop now. To them, you're just a mistake that needs to be erased. The phone buzzed again. My fingers trembled as I read the new message. You can't hide. Blood pays for fortune. I felt sick. The room seemed to spin. Why did he choose me? I'm nobody. I work part-time. I have no family, no friends. Exactly, the man interrupted. His voice was calm, but there was something cold in his eyes. That's why he chose you. Because you have nothing to lose, and no one to betray you. The people in that funeral, every single one of them wanted him dead. He knew his legacy would be safer in the hands of a ghost than in his own bloodline. I stared at him, struggling to process his words. I wanted to scream that I didn't want any of this, that I just wanted my old, quiet life back, but some part of me knew it was already gone. He reached into his coat and handed me a small metal device. A tracker. They're going to force you to play their game, he said, and the first rule of surviving it is to always know who's hunting you. Before I could respond, the distant roar of engines echoed in the alley above. They've found us, he muttered. Time to move again. He pushed open a back door into the maze of the city's underbelly. The night swallowed us whole as we ran, not just from the men with guns, but from the lives we used to have. And in that moment, I realized, inheriting $1 billion hadn't made me rich. It had made me prey. The city's underbelly was a labyrinth of narrow alleys, flickering streetlights, and the hum of distant traffic that felt a world away. My breath turned to mist in the cold night air as we sprinted through the darkness. The silver-haired man leading with the confidence of a predator who knew every shadow. Behind us, the roar of engines drew closer. The black SUVs were back. Their headlights cut through the maze of streets like hunting dogs sniffing out blood. This way, he barked, veering into a side alley so narrow my shoulder brushed the damp brick wall. Trash bins toppled as we passed, and the smell of rot filled my nose. My heart pounded so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. A gunshot cracked, ricocheting off metal. Sparks danced in the dark. I ducked instinctively, clutching the briefcase like it was my only lifeline. We burst out into a deserted street lined with shuttered shops. The city here felt dead. No people, no light, only the echo of our footsteps. The man suddenly stopped and pressed me against the wall, holding a finger to his lips. His eyes scanned the street, sharp and calculating. Then I heard it, a low, rumbling engine idling somewhere close. He leaned close, whispering, "They've split up. They're hunting on foot now." I dared to whisper back, my voice trembling, "What do they want? Just the money?" He shook his head slowly. "They don't care about the money. They want the notebook. That's the real power, and they want you dead, because as long as you're alive, you own what they want." My stomach twisted. Every instinct screamed at me to throw the briefcase away and run. But something deep inside, fear, desperation, maybe pride, kept me gripping it tighter. Suddenly, the sharp crunch of gravel broke the night. Footsteps, multiple sets, closing in. The man drew his gun, motioning me to stay low. "When I tell you to run, you run, and don't look back." The footsteps grew louder. Shadows stretched across the wall, long and distorted under the dim streetlight. My throat went dry. Then, a shout. "He's here!" Everything exploded at once. Gunfire lit up the street. Muzzle flashes danced in the dark. The silver-haired man fired back. His shots precise and deadly. A scream cut through the chaos, followed by the heavy thud of a body hitting the ground. "Go!" he roared. I ran. My legs burned, lungs on fire, but I didn't stop. My shoes pounded the wet pavement as I ducked into another alley. The sounds of gunfire echoing behind me. I didn't know if he was still alive, if he was following me or holding him off. All I knew was that I was alone. Alone, in a city that suddenly felt like a hunting ground. The briefcase thumped against my side with every step, a cruel reminder that I was carrying a fortune that might very well cost me my life. I didn't know where I was going until I saw the faint glow of a neon sign ahead, an old 24-hour laundromat. My instincts screamed for cover, and I dove inside. The place was empty, the hum of washing machines the only sound. I collapsed behind a row of dryers, chest heaving, trying to quiet my breathing. Then, my phone buzzed. With shaking hands, I pulled it out. Another message from the unknown number. "You can't run forever. If you want to survive, come to the place where it all began." I stared at the words, dread pooling in my stomach. The place where it all began. The funeral. The night seemed to close in on me as I stared at the message. Its words like ice in my veins. If you want to survive, come to the place where it all began. The funeral. The thought of going back there made my stomach twist. Every instinct screamed that it was a trap. But hiding in the laundromat, crouched behind humming machines while the city hunted me, I realized something terrifying. Nowhere was safe. If I didn't face this head-on, I would spend whatever time I had left running, until they finally caught me. I tightened my grip on the briefcase. My reflection in the cracked glass of the dryer looked like a stranger, pale face, wild eyes, hair plastered to my forehead with sweat and rain. A part of me still wanted to throw everything away and go back to my old life. But I knew that life was gone the moment I stepped into that cemetery. I slipped out into the wet street, hood pulled up, blending into the shadows as I made my way back to the outskirts of the city. The streets grew quieter with every block, and the neon lights of the city center faded into darkness. My only guide was the memory of that winding dirt path lined with clawing, leafless trees. When I reached the cemetery gates, the air was different, heavier, colder, as if the ground itself remembered the blood spilled over the inheritance I carried. The path crunched under my shoes as I approached the clearing. The coffin was gone, but the wreaths remained, some wilted and damp with night dew. A single candle flickered on the pedestal where the coffin had been, its flame trembling against the wind. Then I heard it, a voice, hoarse, low, and chillingly calm. "You came back." I froze. From the shadows of the trees, a figure emerged. It was one of the men from the funeral, the one whose eyes had burned into me when the will was read. He stepped closer, the beam of a flashlight slicing through the dark and landing on my face. "I knew you'd come," he said, his tone smooth but laced with venom. "Curiosity, it's a dangerous thing." I tried to steady my voice. "What do you want from me?" He tilted his head, almost amused. I want what's mine, what that old fool stole from me, and gave to a stray dog off the street." He circled me slowly, like a predator savoring the fear of its prey. I gripped the briefcase tighter. "You think this money is a gift?" he continued. "No, it's a curse, a death sentence wrapped in cash. And you?" He leaned close, his whisper colder than the night air. "You're not going to live long enough to spend a single dollar." Before I could react, he snapped his fingers. 3 more men emerged from the shadows, guns glinting under the pale moonlight. My chest tightened, my eyes darted around, searching for an escape, but the path was blocked on all sides. The man in front of me smirked and gestured to the briefcase. "Drop it, walk away, and maybe I let you keep your life, for tonight." My hand trembled, but I didn't move. Somewhere deep inside, a spark of defiance I didn't know I had flickered to life. "If this is really a curse," I said, my voice shaking but louder than I expected, "why are you so desperate to have it?" His smirk faltered for a split second. His eyes darkened. Because with it, I own the city, I own everything, and you're just in my way. He raised his hand. The men around him tightened their grips on their weapons. And then, a voice boomed from the darkness. Cold and commanding, step away from him. The silver-haired man emerged from the tree line. His pistol raised and steady. He looked like a ghost in the moonlight, his presence turning the hunter into the hunted. You again? The man sneered. Me again, the silver-haired man replied. And I warned you, touch the boy, and you'll join your boss in the ground. The tension in the air was suffocating. The gunmen hesitated, their eyes flicking between their leader and the man aiming at them. Then, without warning, everything erupted into chaos. Gunfire shattered the night. I dove to the ground, clutching the briefcase as dirt and leaves exploded around me. My ears rang, my chest heaved, and for the second time that night, I realized I was living someone else's war, a war one hadn't chosen, but one I could no longer escape. And somewhere in the back of my mind, through the fear and the adrenaline, I thought of the message on my phone. Blood pays for fortune. I was starting to understand what it meant. The night erupted in flashes of light and the crack of gunfire. Dirt and dead leaves burst into the air around me as I pressed myself flat against the cold ground, clutching the briefcase to my chest like a life raft in a storm. The smell of gunpowder filled my nose, and each shot sent a shockwave through my chest. The silver-haired man moved like a phantom, diving behind a headstone as bullets whizzed past. He fired back with precision, and I saw one of the attackers crumple silently into the wet earth. The leader shouted something, angry, panicked, but his voice was swallowed by the chaos. Move! The silver-haired man barked, his voice sharp through the ringing in my ears. I scrambled to my feet, adrenaline propelling me forward as I weaved between the gravestones. My breath came in short, ragged bursts. Every shadow looked like a hand reaching for me, every crunch of dirt behind me a predator gaining ground. Over here, his voice called. I followed the sound blindly, rounding a mausoleum just as another burst of gunfire tore through the night. A bullet struck the stone inches from my head, sending shards flying. I stumbled but kept running until I nearly slammed into him behind a large, weathered angel statue. He grabbed my shoulder, eyes fierce. You want to live? Do exactly as I say. I nodded frantically, too winded to speak. He pointed to a narrow path leading deeper into the cemetery, where the trees grew thicker and the moonlight barely touched the ground. Run, don't stop, I'll cover you. What about you? I rasped. I've been running this game longer than you've been alive, he said, and for the first time, a grim smile flickered across his face. Go. I ran, my legs burned, my lungs screamed, but fear kept me moving. Behind me, the staccato rhythm of gunfire continued, mixed with shouts and the occasional, chilling silence after a scream. The forested part of the cemetery was like a different world, quiet, suffocating, with only the whisper of wind through skeletal branches. I pushed through brambles and uneven ground, heart-pounding, until I stumbled into a clearing. In the center stood a small stone mausoleum. Its door hung slightly ajar, creaking in the breeze. Something compelled me toward it. My fingers brushed the cold metal handle, and I hesitated, but a sound behind me, the snap of a twig, forced me inside. The air inside was damp and heavy. Moonlight filtered through a small crack in the roof, illuminating rows of urns and plaques. And then I saw it, a small security camera blinking red, barely noticeable in the corner. Before I could process it, a faint click echoed through the room. A metal panel in the wall slid open, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside was a dusty tablet and a single USB drive. My trembling hands grabbed the tablet and pressed the power button. It flickered to life, and a video began to play. A face appeared. Pham Hoang Min, the dead billionaire, staring straight at me with cold, knowing eyes. If you are watching this, his voice rasped, low and deliberate, then you are the one. The first stranger to walk into my funeral. My chest tightened. I could barely breathe. I chose a stranger because I had no one else. He continued, my family, betrayed me. My partners plotted my death. But they will not inherit what I built. Only someone with nothing to lose can survive what is coming. His gaze seemed to pierce through the screen, straight into my soul. They will hunt you. They will try to kill you. And if you want to live, you must become what I was, a ghost in the city of wolves. Suddenly, the tablet went black. Before I could react, a shadow fell across the doorway. The cemetery was silent again, but I wasn't alone. The shadow in the doorway froze me in place. My chest constricted, and the tablet slipped from my trembling hands, clattering onto the stone floor. The briefcase felt heavier than ever, as if the $1 billion inside were made of lead, pulling me toward the ground. A figure stepped into the pale shaft of moonlight. It was the man from the funeral, the leader, the one whose eyes had followed me with venom from the very beginning. His coat was soaked from the misty night, his hair plastered to his forehead, and in his hand gleamed the black mouth of a pistol. "You," he said, his voice a low growl. The little stray who thought he could steal an empire. I stumbled back against the wall, heart pounding, my hands scrambling for anything I could use to defend myself. My fingers brushed the edge of a metal vase, cold and slick with condensation. He took a step closer. His voice was soft, almost pitying. "You should have walked away. That money, it doesn't belong to you. It never did." "Why?" My voice cracked, the question slipping out before I could stop it. "Why did he choose me? What is all this?" He smirked, but there was something feral in his eyes. "He chose you because he wanted to punish us, to spit in our faces from the grave. He knew we'd come for you. And he knew you wouldn't last a week." He raised the gun, steady and silent. Time slowed. The smell of damp stone filled my nostrils. The world narrowed to the dark circle of the barrel pointed at my chest. Then, a voice behind him cut through the tension like a knife. "Drop it." The silver-haired man emerged from the shadows of the trees outside. His gun trained on the leader's head. His coat was torn, his face streaked with dirt and blood. But his hand didn't shake. The leader hesitated for the briefest second, then whipped around to fire. 2 shots exploded in the night. The first shattered the mausoleum's eerie silence. The second felt like thunder in my chest. The leader's body jerked, his gun clattering to the floor as he crumpled to the stone steps. Blood blooming across his chest. His eyes locked with mine for a fleeting second. A mixture of rage and shock. Before going lifeless, the silver-haired man kicked the gun away and stepped inside, his boots echoing on the stone floor. His sharp gaze met mine. "You hesitated." My throat was dry. Words tangled in fear. "If you keep hesitating, you'll die," he said flatly. He crouched by the fallen man, checked his pulse, and stood again. "First lesson of inheritance. If you want to survive, you can't just run. You have to become the hunter." I stared at the dead man on the floor, bile rising in my throat. I had never seen someone die so close, never smelled the metallic tang of blood mixed with cold air. The silver-haired man's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. "We need to move. His friends will come when he doesn't check in." "Who are you?" I managed to whisper, though my voice trembled. He finally gave a small, grim smile. "I was Pham Hoang Min's shadow. His fixer, his last insurance policy. And now, I guess, I'm yours." The words hit me like a shock. I wasn't just inheriting money. I was inheriting a life built on blood and betrayal, and he was telling me I had no choice but to step into it. My phone buzzed again. I almost dropped it, my nerves still raw. A new message glowed on the screen from that same unknown number. 1 down, 9 to go. This is your war now. My stomach twisted into a knot. 9 to go. 9 what? 9 people trying to kill me. 9 steps in some twisted game the dead billionaire had set in motion. The silver-haired man looked at the screen and then at me. "He's right. You're in it now. There's no turning back." I glanced at the corpse, at the briefcase, at the tablet that still lay on the cold stone floor. For the first time, I felt something burn hotter than fear, a spark of dark resolve. Because for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized one thing. If I didn't start fighting back, I wouldn't live to see sunrise. The cold night wrapped around me like a shroud as we left the mausoleum. The metallic scent of blood still clinging to my clothes. My legs felt heavy, my hands trembled uncontrollably, and yet there was no time to process the horror. The silver-haired man, my unwanted guardian, moved swiftly through the trees. His gun still drawn, every sense on high alert. We emerged from the cemetery onto an empty road, dimly lit by a single flickering street lamp. A mist had rolled in from the river, swallowing the city's edges, making everything look unreal, like we were moving through a nightmare that refused to end. He stopped abruptly and turned to me. From here on, you're a target every second of every day. You've taken a step into a war that killed the man who built it. If you want to survive, you follow my rules. My voice cracked. And what if I don't? His eyes, sharp as glass, met mine. Then you die, quickly, if you're lucky. I swallowed hard, nodding. I couldn't deny it anymore. This wasn't some bad dream. It was my life now. We followed the silent street to a waiting car, a nondescript gray sedan tucked into the shadows. He motioned for me to get in, and I slid into the passenger seat with the briefcase still chained to my wrist. He drove without headlights for the first few blocks, weaving through the sleeping city with the instincts of someone who had done this before. As the car hummed along, I dared to ask the question that had been clawing at me since the message, 9 to go. What does that mean? He glanced at me, his expression unreadable in the dim dashboard light. 9 people, 9 threats, 9 players in this game your benefactor left behind. I froze. Players? He nodded. When Pham Hoang Minh died, he didn't just leave you a fortune. He left you a seat in his world. A world where power doesn't transfer through lawyers or contracts, but through survival. Those 9 people will try to kill you. Because as long as you're alive, you're the heir, and only one heir can sit at the top. The words sank in like cold steel. My fingers dug into the briefcase. I wanted to scream that I never asked for this, that I wanted to give it all back, but I knew, deep down, that the choice had been stolen from me the moment I stepped into that funeral. The phone buzzed again. My heart jumped as I read the new message. Level 2 begins at dawn. Player 2 is waiting. I stared at the words, my pulse roaring in my ears. It wasn't just a threat anymore. It was an invitation to a twisted game I couldn't escape. The silver-haired man let out a humorless laugh. They're not wasting time. They're making you play immediately. Who is player 2? I whispered. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and tossed a small envelope onto my lap. I hesitated, then opened it. Inside was a single photograph. A woman, mid-30s, elegant and cold-eyed, standing in front of a skyscraper. On the back, in sharp black ink, was one word: eliminate. My stomach twisted. Eliminate? You mean? He kept his eyes on the road. If she lives, you die. That's the rule of the game now. The city skyline appeared ahead, distant and glittering, as the first gray light of dawn crept across the horizon. And in that quiet, eerie hour before sunrise, I understood the truth. I hadn't inherited a fortune. I had inherited a kill-or-be-killed legacy. And for the first time, a terrifying thought crossed my mind, one I couldn't push away. If I wanted to survive this game, I might have to become a killer.